Welcome to La Chaîne Géopolitique. So tonight we will talk about the latest development, the latest clash between the Tajik army and the Kyrgyz army. So it is by far the most serious clash since the end of the Soviet Union. So we are used in this region to some extent to clashes, but we are talking about sporadic violence. But this time, the scale of violence has been much higher, much brutal, resulting in the death of 36 Kyrgyz. Even some sources are talking about 60 people dead only just from the Kyrgyz side. And today, in the first admission, the Tajik authority recognized as well that some people died also from the Tajik side. So, first of all, it's very essential to understand that that's the last, let's say, border in the Soviet area, in the Soviet region, in the former Soviet Union, where there is no clear mark border. So it means that to say in other words, people basically do not know where border lies. So people do not know precisely if they are in the Tajik or in the Kyrgyz land. And in order to make things more complicated, even, it's important to keep in mind that Kyrgyz and Tajik do not share the same map. Tajik are referring to the 1924 map based on the drawing from Joseph Stalin, which change the border in favor of Tajik. You have to keep in mind that Joseph Stalin, in general, used the ethnic rivalry in favor of one ethnic at the expense of the other. So in this case, he did it. So that's why the Kyrgyz do not recognize this 1924 borderline, and instead they recognize another border which has been established, which has been drawn in 1954. And that's why that explains why today both authorities do not, have a different borderline. But as I said, at the introduction of this video, so far, not violence has been curbed during all this over the last 30 years since the end of the Soviet Union. But last Thursday, very very intensive violence has erupted. And so how we can explain that suddenly last Thursday such violence erupted? So it's important to keep in mind that this violence has been sparked due to water facility. Tajik officials attempted to place camera surveillance to monitor those water supply facility on Isfara River, due to the fact that previously, over the last weeks, the newly Kyrgyz president Sadir Japarov has announced that the Kyrgyzstan will set up a reservoir, because you have to keep in mind that Kyrgyzstan lies upward this Isfara River. So, as you know, as a newly elected president, which is a kind of which is those leaders who try to speak, who has a nationalistic stance, which tries to gain some popularity to please people. Sadir Japarov, has announced that he will let's say, do his best. Let's say he will do whatever it is in his capacity, let's say, to improve the living condition of Kyrgyz people. So that's why he wanted to set up this reservoir, because we know that there is a major water issue in this region. There is it doesn't rain a lot, so it creates, let's say, a very let's say recurrent drought in the region. So those water supplies issues so could be resolved by this water reservoir. But the Tajik authority seems that doesn't seem very pleased with this idea of a reservoir, and probably they use this announcement by Sadir Japarov, the newly Kyrgyz elected president, to attack the Kyrgyz territory. It's a kind of speculation, but at least it's one explanation of, let's say, the most likely plausible explanation of why such violence erupted in the region, because so far, as I said, everything has been holding. And what it is interesting, it's those violence which erupted abruptly on Thursday immediately ended the next days under the Russian and Chinese auspices. Both countries have called for calm, and immediately both parties stop their fighting. Both prime minister and both chief army also met, signed a ceasefire, which has so far which is still holding. At the time we are speaking on Monday evening, 3rd of May, there is still no fighting. So it's interesting to see that immediately fighting stopped few hours after erupting. So it probably shows that it's more a message that Tajikistan wants to send to Kyrgyzstan than a real that entering into war and seize more territorial territorial land. So we see that Tajikistan doesn't want to claim territory, but instead wants to control and to stop, let's say, the ambition of Sadir Japarov, because you have to keep in mind that Kyrgyzstan is a very different, it's a, let's say, I would say, the outlandish country of the region. It's like has a very different profile from the rest of the region, due to the fact that Kyrgyzstan is a lively democracy, unlike the other countries in the region, which are simply dictatorship. I mean, for example, Tajikistan, as the president of Tajikistan, Emomali Rahmon, has been the only president since the end of Soviet Union 30 years ago. And now we are actually hearing that his son could take over his presidency. I mean, Uzbekistan is also a dictatorship with absolutely no freedom. The same for Turkmenistan, nearly the same for Kazakhstan. But Kyrgyzstan is completely different. It holds presidential, parliamentary elections, freedom of expression, demonstration. So completely other, let's say, atmosphere compared with the rest of the region. And probably those dictators, like the Tajik president Rahmon, is probably trying to test, to challenge, to defy, to undermine, let's say, the presidency of Sadir Japarov, which is still, as far as I know, still very popular among the Kyrgyz population due to his nationalist, populist style, which does not please at all dictators like Rahmon, the Tajik president. And probably also there is kind of rivalry between President Sadir Japarov and President President Rahmon, Emomali Rahmon. So it's what we can say at this stage about this eruption of violence at the border. Let's see whether the ceasefire will hold. But we will continue to follow the development on the border between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan on this channel.